Okay. So now one tricky concept, but it's not that tricky once you get used to it. We use this with a range, right? This idea that there's an interesting triple. There's a start, a stop, and a step. I'm just recalling what we did with range. Range was going to generate integers. So I would say integers range 0, 5, and 0 was the starting point and 5 was the stopping point. But we also had a step, which could be a positive or negative value. Strings also work in the same way. So these things are called slices. And now you can use slices to access elements in a list, right? So for example, look at this example. If I run this, again, I'm using the same string. If I want, everything from the first character onwards, from the first character to the fourth character. So you have to be little careful that it's really 3 characters. And if you don't need it, then you can default some of them, right? So that can be a little confusing. Like if you see :4, is it the stopping point or the starting point or the ending point, right? But the way to read it is the first one is missing actually. So that means by default, it must start from 0, right? And the fourth one is the stopping point, right? So you can use these slides. So for example, if you want the last character or some characters after 4th location, you can do 4 : right? So if you run it, you will see, so you see the output of greeting : 4, you get the first 4 characters, hell, right? If you do 4 : then you get everything after the 4th character. So O world, right? And this again, just play with it, change these values and see what happens, right? But I want you to go back. This is the only pattern I want to share with you. Always think when you're trying to get subsets of a string, start, stop, and step, right? And you'll see this pattern carried over later when we do data science and you look at pandas and other kind of more advanced data structures. You're going to see this slicing ideas carried forward. So this is a great time to pick up how to do slicing, right? Then of course, negative steps. Negative steps are helpful. If you go negative steps, it reverses a string. Now this becomes a very interesting Python idiom. If you want to reverse a string, you don't have to write multiple lines of code or any kind of loop. You could just say, start from the beginning, end at the end, but go backwards, right? And it just goes backwards. You should also think about, because of negative indices, strings and lists, you must think of them like loops. Usually think of them as a long array, but actually when you go backwards, you can think of it as going, it's closed up. It's like the number line, right? 0 is connected to -1 comes back at the end of the string, okay? Just play with a piece of paper, use indices and try to navigate around and you'll see. Negative values will take you in the opposite direction. Now you might ask, why do I need all these negative values? Typically you don't, but sometimes, like for example, in this case, I'll show you a nice little program in a second. In fact, you're going to have to write it.